They called my one-bedroom a shoebox and told me to aim smaller. I smiled. My family always used Grandma's estate as their favorite punchline, the fallen-down orchard, the worthless lake house. But by dessert, their jokes dried up. That's when I unzipped the leather folio and showed them the deed I'd already recorded. Paper beats pride. Every single time Riley Ashford pushed open the heavy oak door to her parents' house, and the smell hit her first. It wasn't the crisp, cool scent of an Asheville autumn clinging to her blazer. It was the thick, humid air of a Sunday dinner, casserole steam specifically. The condensed soup and processed cheese aroma of her mother's Sunday special mingled with the faint, acidic tang of furniture polish. The sound of the refrigerator, a low, constant thrum, seemed to vibrate in her teeth. It was the background noise of this house, the unwavering hum of its invisible pecking order. She was 29, and she still felt the need to apologize for her arrival. "I'm here," she called out, shrugging off the navy blazer that served as her armor in the world of financial consulting. She smoothed the front of her silk shell. Her hands were clean, her nails filed and buffed, but she couldn't scrub away the calluses on her palms from gripping the pull-up bar at her gym. The one concession to sanity she allowed herself. Work, hard work, something this family talked about, but rarely recognized. "You're late?" her mother, Deborah, trilled from the dining room. Not an accusation, just a statement of fact that solidified Riley's position at the bottom of the hierarchy. She walked in. The table was set. The heavy oak, inherited and polished to a mirror shine, reflected the harsh light of the dining room chandelier. Her father, Carl, sat at the head, already digging into the rolls. Her Aunt Lou, Deborah's sister, was fanning herself with a napkin, though the room was barely warm. "Riley, darling, you made it." Aunt Lou's voice was syrupy. "Hi, Aunt Lou? Dad?" Carl grunted, his attention on the butter. Riley took her seat at the far end, the one nearest the kitchen, the seat that had always been hers. She felt the familiar pressure settle on her chest. This was not a meal. It was a performance, and she'd forgotten her lines. They were halfway through the lukewarm casserole when the piercing, custom ringtone of a pop song filled the room. Carl fumbled for his phone, his face lighting up with a performative brightness. "Ah, it's our star." He propped the phone against a water glass. Savannah's face, perfectly lit and filtered even on a Sunday evening, beamed at them. She was 27, a successful lifestyle and wellness influencer, and had not attended a Sunday dinner in person in over a year. "Hi, Daddy. Hi, everyone." Her voice was a high-practiced chirp. "Sorry I couldn't be there. I'm just swamped with this new brand deal. It's insane." "We understand, honey," Deborah said, leaning into the frame. "You're building an empire." "Totally." "Oh, is that Riles?" Savannah zoomed in, the pixelated image of Riley's face filling the screen. "I was just showing my followers the cutest little apartment tour, and it made me think of you. Hold on. Let me show everyone." The screen flipped. Riley wasn't sure what she was looking at, some curated corner of Savannah's loft, but then Savannah's voice returned, dripping with faux sympathy. "I was just telling them about your place. So cute. So compact." Riley felt the air tighten. She looked down at her plate. "Wait, Riles, you're still in that shoebox?" Savannah asked. Her laugh was light, airy, and brutal. It was a spark in a dry forest. Aunt Lou snorted first, a quick, sharp sound she tried to cover with her napkin. Carl let out a rumbling chuckle. "Now, Savannah, be nice." "What I am being nice," Savannah protested, her filtered eyes wide. "It's just, at your age I'd be claustrophobic. Where do you even put your things? Or, a guest?" The forks had all paused. The only sound was the refrigerator's hum and Savannah's tinkling laughter through the tiny speaker. "Starter life, starter dreams, I always say," Aunt Lou muttered into her glass of sweet tea, fanning herself with renewed vigor. "Some people just aim smaller. It's fine." Riley felt the blood rush to her face, a hot, prickling wave. She gripped her fork, pressing her thumb against the tines. She recognized this script. This was the public execution, the part where her perceived failures were laid bare to justify what came next. Deborah and Carl exchanged the look. Riley knew it well. It was the look they had practiced, the silent communication of a speech rehearsed in the privacy of their bedroom. You handle this part, I'll handle that part. The laughter about her apartment died, replaced by a different kind of silence, a heavy, expectant quiet. Well, Carl said, clearing his throat and placing his napkin on the table. Speaking of property, Riley's stomach tightened. Here it comes. We were just discussing Grandma Evelyn's old place, Deborah added, jumping in smoothly. That derelict old orchard. Such a shame, Aunt Lou sighed. All that land, just rotting. And that lake house, full of spiders, I imagine. We'll have to figure something out after probate. Of course, Carl said, waving a dismissive hand, as if probate were a minor inconvenience, a bit of paperwork before the real business could begin. Riley looked across the table at her younger brother. Grant, at 19, was the only one not participating. He was slouched in his chair, thumbs flying over his phone, pointedly ignoring the conversation, but as Carl spoke, Grant's eyes flicked up. He met Riley's gaze. His look was a swift, silent telegraph. Half apology, half warning. Then, under the table, she felt a sharp kick to her ankle. It wasn't hostile. It was a jolt, a coded message. Keep cool. Don't react. Don't give them the fight they want. Riley took a slow, silent breath, uncurling her fist from the fork. I've been running some numbers, Carl announced, leaning forward. He was in his family patriarch mode now. The provider, the planner. That Hollis Orchard property, it's just sitting there, dead weight. Grandma let it go, bless her heart. But it's an asset, and this family, he paused for dramatic effect, needs to leverage its assets. What we're thinking, Deborah said, picking up the thread, is a unified family plan. We sell the orchard. It's the smart move. A developer has already been sniffing around, Carl said, his voice dropping, as if sharing a corporate secret. They'd pay top dollar for that lake access. And with that capital, Deborah beamed, we could finally fund Savannah's studio build-out properly, a real investment in this family's future. And, Carl added, a little too quickly, retire a few of those high-interest cards we've been carrying, get us all on solid ground. His cards, his ground. Riley kept her face neutral. She looked at the congealed casserole on her plate. She catalogued the assumptions, the entitlement, the casual, breathtaking erasure of her grandmother. She waited until the silence stretched, until they were all looking at her, waiting for her to nod, to agree, to be the compliant. Smaller dreaming daughter, she lifted her head. Her voice, when it came out, was crisp, cool, and devoid of the heat she felt in her chest. It was the voice she used with her clients. You're sure we own it free and clear? The question landed like a stone in a quiet pond. Aunt Lou gasped, offended on their behalf. Carl's jovial mask slipped. A boisterous, forced laugh erupted from his chest. Of course we do. What kind of question is that? Riley, it's family land. It's been in the Hollis family for 100 years. It comes to us, to me and your mother. That's right, Deborah said, but her smile was brittle. The rehearsal hadn't accounted for this. We're just waiting on the probate court to finalize the transfer. But, sweetheart, Deborah continued, shifting seamlessly from defense to offense. Her tone became a high, thin whine of practiced sympathy. That's exactly why we're so worried about you. All this skepticism, this focus on the negative. She leaned forward, her eyes bright with a predator's concern. You're living in that tiny, expensive apartment. You're working so hard, but you have nothing to show for it. We just want you to be realistic. She reached across the table, patting Riley's hand. Riley resisted the urge to pull away. You need to learn frugality. Honey, maybe you should get a roommate. Or, honestly, maybe it's time to downsize emotionally. Stop attaching yourself to these grand ideas. Not everyone is meant to build an empire like Savannah. Downsize emotionally. The phrase hung in the air, thick and suffocating as the casserole steam. It was the most violent thing Riley had ever heard. It meant, be smaller, want less, do not question us, know your place. Riley's gaze drifted from her mother's perfectly concerned face, past her father's impatient scowl, to the fireplace mantel. There, in a simple silver frame, was a photograph of Grandma Evelyn. It was from years ago, taken at the orchard. She wasn't smiling, she was just looking, her eyes clear, her mouth set in a line that wasn't unkind, but tolerated no fools. She was the only witness in the room, not laughing, not lying, not demanding Riley shrink. Riley turned her gaze back to her mother. She swallowed the heat. She felt it go down. A burning coal of humiliation and rage, settling deep in her stomach. She cataloged the voices: Savannah's high-pitched dismissal, Aunt Lou's wheezing mutters, her father's blustering entitlement, her mother's weaponized pity. She cataloged what each person in this room thought they knew, and then she smiled. It was a small, polite smile, the one she'd perfected over 29 years of these dinners. It was the smile of the good daughter, the one who aimed smaller. She picked up her fork. This is delicious. Mom, really, could you pass the peach cobbler? The peach cobbler was too sweet, the syrup a thick, cloying blanket over the fruit. Riley ate it anyway, the sugary burn a weak distraction from the acid rising in her throat. The laughter about her shoebox apartment had faded, but the echoes remained, clinging to the air like the heavy casserole steam. As Deborah and Aunt Lou began clearing the plates, the real work began. This was the second phase, the casual, undermining chatter disguised as post-dinner cleanup. You know, Riley, Deborah said, scraping a perfectly good serving of cobbler into the trash. You have so many files in that little place of yours, all that paperwork, it just breeds clutter. Riley felt a familiar, cold spike in her gut. Clutter. The word dissolved the present. Suddenly, she wasn't 29, holding a porcelain coffee cup. She was 15, standing in her teenage bedroom, the afternoon sun highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. She was holding a white paper envelope, the one she kept tucked under her mattress, the one that had held $243 in diner tips. It was empty. The envelope smelled faintly of burger grease and the cheap vanilla air freshener the diner used. She remembered the visceral, hollow feeling of violation. I borrowed it, Riley, Deborah had explained later. Not looking up from her magazine, she'd waved a dismissive hand, her bracelets jangling. Savannah needed new gear for that drama camp. It's a career-defining opportunity, you understand? We'll pay you back. Eventually. Eventually never came. Savannah's career-defining camp had resulted in a portfolio of blurry headshots and a demand for a new digital camera the following Christmas. Riley looked at her mother in the dining room, stacking plates with martyred precision. Paperwork breeds clutter. Her mind translated the phrase instantly, sharpening the 15-year-old memory into a 29-year-old directive. Erase your receipts. Make your proof disappear. Don't keep a record of what we've taken. I manage, Riley said, her voice even. I like my files. Oh, I'm sure, Aunt Lou chimed in, carrying a stack of glasses. But you've always been the sentimental one, probably why you loved Grandma Evelyn's place so much. She paused, her eyes gleaming with a piteous sort of cruelty. You should really get out there and take some photos, dear, you know, for the memories. Before the developers have to fix it all up. Fix it, as in bulldoze the 150-year-old lake house, clear-cut the heirloom apple trees. It's just such a prime piece of land to be doing nothing, Lou continued, fanning herself again. I heard just a rumor, mind you, from my bridge club that one of those big hotel chains from Atlanta is circling the lake, looking for a new boutique location. Carl, who had been studying the developer's brochure, scoffed. Tacky. We wouldn't let that happen. It needs to be exclusive. Exactly, Deborah agreed, nodding vigorously. Something tasteful. Something that honors the potential. They pretended it was beneath them, but Riley saw it. She saw the shared, greedy glance between her parents. They were calculating. They were already spending the money from the tacky hotel chain, debating the color of the new granite countertops for this kitchen. The conversation drifted, as it always did, to the precarious state of the family's finances. Masked as strategic planning, Grant, who had been silent for most of the meal, suddenly looked up from his phone. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice casual, too casual. "Did that thing with the bank ever go through that second mortgage application you were working on?" Riley froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. A muscle in Carl's jaw jumped, but he covered it with a broad, paternal laugh. "Just exploring options. Sun-smart businesses always keep a line of credit open. Diversifying our portfolio." It was a word salad of financial buzzwords he'd picked up from a golf buddy, but Riley saw the truth. His calm was feigned, a thin coat of paint over stressed wood, a second mortgage application, which meant the first one hadn't gone through. Or more likely, it had been rejected. The bank, unlike her family, actually read the fine print. They would have run a title search. They would have hit a wall. "Exactly," Savannah's voice burst from the phone, seizing the lull. "And speaking of smart business, Daddy, let me show you the real projections for the studio. I updated the brand deck." The phone screen flickered, and Carl angled it for the table to see. A slick, magenta and white presentation filled the screen. Savannah Holloway Wellness Evaluation. The slides were filled with buzzwords. Synergistic reach. Projected Q4 engagement metrics. Tiered influencer valuation. Riley watched, her professional instincts taking over. She ran Kestrel Ledger LLC, her own boutique financial consulting firm. She spent her days untangling the chaotic books of startups and small businesses. She knew a fraudulent graph when she saw one. Savannah's follower growth chart was a perfect, inorganic hockey stick. Her engagement-to-follower ratio, the number that really mattered, was laughably low, a clear indicator of purchased followers. The projected brand deal revenue was based on metrics that didn't exist, invoices that hadn't been paid. It was a house of cards. "As you can see," Savannah narrated, her voice full of breathless confidence, "the valuation puts the studio at a 7-figure potential within 18 months. It's literally a money-printing machine. We just need the seed capital to, build the machine." While her father nodded, his face slack with pride. Riley slipped her hand into her blazer pocket. Her thumb found her phone, under the cover of the oak table. She unlocked the screen. Her fingers were steady, the calluses on her palms grounding her. She opened a new, encrypted message. To Maya Torres. Subject, new file, body. Need a quiet forensic look-see, family LLC, potential asset fraud, urgent. She pressed send. The delivered checkmark appeared. New message. To Jonah Pike. Subject Hollis Estate, R. Ashford, body urgent. Need to confirm status of probate and any pre-filed deeds re. Evelyn Hollis, ASAP. Call me. Send. She let the phone rest in her palm for a moment. As she went to slide it back into her pocket, her fingertips brushed against the worn leather of her wallet. The touch sparked another memory, as clear and sharp as a shard of glass. Grandma Evelyn, on her porch at the lake house last year, handing her a birthday card. The card was simple. Recycled paper with a single. Pressed Queen Anne's lace on the front. Inside, a modest check and 7 words in her strong, clear cursive. "You're the only one who reads the fine print." At the time, Riley had smiled, thinking it was just a fond little jab at her career choice, a bookkeeper's joke. Now, sitting at this table, listening to her sister sell a fantasy and her father plan to fund it with an asset he didn't own, she finally understood. It wasn't a joke. It was a map. It was a warning. And, perhaps, it was an instruction. The presentation ended. The cobbler plates were gone. Deborah sat back, clasping her hands on the table, her face arranged in a mask of maternal sacrifice and boundless love. "This," she said, her voice soft, "is what it's all about. Family unity, all of us pulling together for the common good, helping each other achieve our dreams." Her gaze, bright with a manufactured, high-wattage warmth, settled on Riley. "You know, Riley, that security deposit on your apartment, you'll get that back when you move, right? When you find a more frugal situation." Riley went perfectly still. The air in the room seemed to thin. "If the landlord agrees the unit is in good condition, yes, that's how deposits work." "Well," Deborah continued, her voice impossibly gentle as she smoothed a non-existent wrinkle in the tablecloth, "Savannah's studio is going to need, well, everything: equipment, software, acoustical panels. It's a mountain of startup capital." She looked directly at Riley, her eyes wide and pleading. "And a gift, a real, tangible show of support from her sister that would mean the world. It would show you're finally part of the family unity plan." There it was, not loan, gift. She wanted Riley to drain her only liquid savings, the buffer between her and disaster, and gift it to Savannah for her fantasy studio. A studio that would be built on land they were planning to steal. Across the table. Grant's jaw tightened so hard Riley heard the click of his teeth. He was staring at his plate, but his shoulders were rigid, bunched up around his ears. He'd heard it. He knew exactly what just happened. Riley's phone vibrated in her pocket. A short, sharp buzz. She held her mother's gaze. "I'll have to think about that." "Don't think too long, dear," Aunt Lou interjected. "Opportunities like this don't wait." Another vibration. Riley stood, placing her napkin on the table. "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom." She knew they would interpret it as weakness. She was fleeing. She was going to downsize emotionally in the guest bath. She saw the small, triumphant smile her mother exchanged with her aunt. She closed the bathroom door. The click of the lock unnaturally loud. The walls were papered in a cloying peach floral. She leaned against the cool porcelain sink and pulled out her phone. 2 messages from Grant. "That's bullshit, Riles." A second later. "Don't let them bulldoze you." Riley looked at her own reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were not angry. They were not sad. They were clear. The heat she had swallowed earlier was gone, replaced by something cold, hard, and perfectly formed, a bearing. She was not the 15-year-old girl missing her diner tips. She was the 29-year-old woman who ran Kestrel Ledger LLC. She was the woman who had just hired a forensic bookkeeper and an estate attorney. She opened the message thread to Grant. Her thumb hovered, then typed a single reply, a single emoji. She hit send. She pocketed the phone. It felt heavy in her hand, solid and sure, like a holstered truth. She turned on the tap, the cold water sharp and stinging on her calluses, and began to wash her hands. The drive from her parents' house in the polished suburbs to her modest walk-up apartment near downtown Asheville took 22 minutes. 22 minutes for the simmering heat in her stomach to cool, to harden from a coal of humiliation into a diamond-hard point of focus. She bypassed the shoebox living room her family had so gleefully mocked. The clutter Deborah had warned her about was, in reality, a meticulously organized office nook tucked into an alcove. This was the headquarters of Kestrel Ledger LLC, her boutique financial consulting firm. It was all virtual. Just her and 3 highly skilled contractors. To her family, she was just Riley, who's good with numbers. To her clients, she was the woman who found the decimal point that was costing them $100,000 a year. She was the one who untangled fraudulent vendor accounts. She was, as Grandma Evelyn used to say, the one who read the fine print. Riley sat in her ergonomic chair, the city lights painting a quiet, geometric pattern on the wall. The glow of her dual monitors felt more like home than her parents' chandelier. She opened her encrypted drive. She created a new client file name Ashford, Carl Deborah Hollis Estate. She opened a new ledger, account family, Status hostile. This was the only way. To detach. To treat this as she would any other case of potential asset mismanagement. She took a sip of cold water, the taste sharp and clean. The investigation began. First, the public record. She logged into the Buncombe County Assessor's portal. She typed in the address for Hollis Orchard. The parcel ID number popped up. She cross-referenced that ID with the county's Register of Deeds portal. She ran a standard lien search first. Her breath caught. Nothing. No second mortgage. Grant had been right to be suspicious. Carl's application must have been rejected, but why a bank wouldn't reject a loan on a valuable, paid-off property unless there was a title issue? She filtered the documents for the parcel ID. Sorting by date, most recent first, she saw tax payments, utility easements from the 1980s, an old boundary survey from 1994. And then, she saw it. Date recorded, 2 years and 4 months ago. Document type Deed TOD. Grantor Evelyn R. Hollis. Riley's mouse hovered over the link, her finger trembling slightly. A transfer on death deed. A simple, powerful legal instrument that conveys property at the time of death, completely bypassing the messy, public, and contestable process of probate. It was a sniper rifle of an estate tool. She clicked the PDF link. The scanned document filled her screen. The county recorder's timestamp a digital seal in the corner. She read the legal description, her eyes scanning the metes and bounds, the familiar language of thence north 88 degrees, to a stone marker, and then the beneficiary clause. Upon the death of the grantor, Evelyn R. Hollis, all right, title, and interest in the aforementioned property shall be conveyed to and vest immediately in the following beneficiary, Riley M. Ashford. She read it again, and a third time. The letters didn't change. Her, not the Ashford Family Trust, not my children, Carl and Deborah, just Riley M. Ashford. Her vision tunneled. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. Grandma had done this over 2 years ago. She had sat at this table, listened to the same condescending remarks, the same greedy plotting, and she had quietly, legally, and definitively disarmed them all. Riley scrolled to the second page. A writer. Her breath hitched. It wasn't just the land, including all appurtenant rights, specifically Hollis Orchard, the residential structure known as the Lake Parcel, and all associated water rights. Water rights. In North Carolina, that was a massive, separate value. She scrolled further. A second, attached document, filed the same day. Document type Declaration of Easement. It described the single paved road that led from the main highway into the orchard, the road Carl had so confidently pointed to on his developer plan. Said access easement shall be under the sole control of the owner of parcel ID. The parcel Riley now owned, no commercial or heavy equipment access permitted without written consent of the owner. Grandma hadn't just given her the house. She had given her the front gate, the driveway, and the only key. The developer's trucks, Savannah's studio build-out. None of it could happen without her signature, a signature she would never give. The next logical step clicked into place in her professional brain. Liabilities. She switched back to the county tax assessor's portal. They'd called the place derelict, rotting. They were assuming Grandma had let it go, that the taxes were delinquent, that it was a burden they would have to fix. She pulled the tax history. Status paid. Current, she blinked, paid. Her parents hadn't paid it. She knew their finances too well. She pulled the payment record for last year. Payment type cashier's check. Her heart began to pound, a low, steady drum against her ribs. She had helped Grandma organize her finances for the last 5 years, scanning important documents into a private, encrypted cloud drive. She logged into her Kestrel ledger archive, not the Ashford family file, but her Evelyn file. She found the folder tax receipts. She opened the scan of the cashier's check request form from Grandma's local bank. In the memo line, in that strong, clear cursive that had been on her birthday card, were 2 words, Hollis Orchard, 2024. Grandma had been paying it all along, quietly, with a financial instrument that couldn't be traced to a personal bank account her parents might try to access. She was keeping the title clean, and waiting for Riley. Riley's fingers flew across the keyboard. Validate, verify, the probate court portal. She searched for Evelyn Hollis's estate. Just as she'd suspected, a small estate filing, minimal, filed by her father 2 weeks ago. It listed personal effects clothing, furniture, and one checking account. Value approx. $4,000. That was it. Her parents were waiting for the probate court to grant them control of the land. But the land was never in the estate. The TOD had already done its job. The second Grandma's heart stopped. The title had vested in Riley, legally, irrevocably. There would be no sibling sign-off, no family vote, no unified plan. It was already done. Riley sat back, the breath leaving her lungs in a long, slow whoosh. This entire dinner, the humiliation about her apartment, the gift of her security deposit, it was all a desperate, pathetic attempt to squeeze her for cash while they waited for a payday that was never, ever coming. Now, her mind shifted. It moved from defense to offense, from ownership to leverage. She wasn't just going to keep the orchard. She was going to make it thrive in a way that would be a public, permanent testament to what her family had tried to destroy. She opened a new browser tab, state environmental reports, land trust databases. She pulled the zoning maps for the lake, the shoreline. Yes, it was designated as a priority watershed. She knew about this from a client in Raleigh, the state conservation tax credit. She pulled the acreage, the precise length of the lake frontage from the deed description, and ran the numbers through the state's credit calculator. The result made her sit up straight. It wasn't a small rebate. If she placed the shoreline and a portion of the heirloom orchard under a conservation easement locking it from development forever, the state would grant her a transferable tax credit. A credit worth, by her quick calculation, just over 6 figures. It wasn't just land. It was a liquid asset. She grabbed her phone. Her hands were perfectly steady now. She dialed Maya Torres, her forensic bookkeeper. Maya, it's Riley. I'm sending you a parcel number and an EIS report from the state. Can you validate the conservation credit math for me? I'm seeing a substantial number and I need a second set of eyes. On it, Maya's voice came back. No nonsense as always. While Maya worked, Riley typed an email to Jonah Pike, Esquire. Subject, Hollis Estate Clock starts now. Jonah, I have in hand a recorded transfer on death deed from Buncombe County, filed 2 years ago, naming me as sole beneficiary for the Hollis Orchard property. Grantor, my grandmother is deceased. I need you to confirm validity and priority over any subsequent probate claims from my parents who have opened a small estate file. The exact procedure and timeline for recording the supplemental affidavit of death to finalize the title transfer. Draft standard. Notice of ownership change language for utilities, banks, and any interested third parties. I need this yesterday. Riley. She hit send. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. You're not crazy. You're conservative. The state registrar loves shoreline parcels. Numbers are clear. It's gold. Riley, go get it. Riley closed her laptop. The screen went black, reflecting her own face. She saw the girl in the shoebox, the girl who was supposed to downsize emotionally. She stood up and walked to the small bookshelf by her desk. On the top shelf sat a dented, floral-patterned metal recipe box. It was one of the few things she had taken from Grandma's kitchen after the funeral, before her mother could declutter it for an estate sale. She opened the lid. The smell of cardamom, dried ink, and old paper wafted out. She flipped past Sunday Chicken, past Apple Brown Betty, and there, tucked in the very back, behind Peach Cobbler, was a single, folded sheet of Grandma's thick, cream-colored letterhead. Riley unfolded it. It wasn't a recipe. It was a note, just 6 words, in that strong, familiar cursive. If they laugh, hand them paper. Riley stared at the note. It was permission. It was the strategy. It was Grandma's last, whispered instruction. The paper in her hand began to shake, a small, violent tremor. It wasn't fear. It was the release of 29 years of swallowed heat. It was the adrenaline of a fight she finally had the tools to win. She stood there, in the quiet of her shoebox apartment, staring at her grandmother's words, until her hands, at last, were perfectly, terribly still. The next morning, sleep felt like a tactical error she couldn't afford. Riley was at her desk by 7:00 a.m., coffee black and scalding. The shoebox was humming with quiet energy. Kestrel Ledger LLC was, for today, a command center. Her phone, set to silent, lit up at 8:05 a.m. exactly. Jonah Pike. "Good morning, Ms. Ashford." Jonah was all business, his voice a dry, comforting rustle of legal paper. "I reviewed the deed you sent. It is, in a word, ironclad. The TOD was filed correctly, notarized, and properly recorded 2 years ago. It has absolute priority. Your parents' probate filing is irrelevant the asset. As you correctly assessed, never entered the estate. It's yours. It has been yours since the moment of your grandmother's death." Riley closed her eyes for 1 second. The confirmation was a steel rod settling into her spine. "What's the next move?" "Immediate recording of the supplemental affidavit," Jonah said. "It's the formal notice to the county that the transferor, your grandmother, is deceased, which officially clears the title into your name for all public-facing purposes. It's a housekeeping measure, but it's the one that slams the door. I have the document drafted. You need to sign it, have it notarized, and get it to the Register of Deeds. Today. I'll have it filed before lunch." "Good," Jonah said. "Once that's indexed, any title search run by any bank, developer, or creditor will list you, and only you, as the fee-simple owner. Their redevelopment plan will hit a brick wall so fast, it'll give them whiplash. The clock, as you said, is running." 10:12 Riley was standing at a small glass counter at a shipping center 2 blocks from her apartment. The notary, a woman with tired eyes and a surprisingly forceful grip, had already reviewed her driver's license. "Sign here," the woman said, tapping the line on the affidavit of death of transferor. Riley uncapped her pen. Her signature was firm. Riley M. Ashford. It looked different on this document. Heavier. The notary pressed her embosser into the page. The chunk of the stamp was a sound of finality. It was a lock turning. "Thank you," Riley said, sliding the document into a pre-addressed courier envelope. She paid for the Priority 1 delivery to the Buncombe County Register of Deeds. The clerk promised it would be there by 11:30 a.m. As she walked out into the bright, cool morning, she felt lighter. The first piece of paper was in motion. 11:40 a.m. Back at her desk, Riley's screen showed the county's e-filing portal. She uploaded the second set of documents Jonah had prepared. Notice of ownership change. This one was for the utility companies, the tax assessor, the bank her father had tried to get the mortgage from. It was a polite, formal memo that said, "All previous contacts are obsolete. Speak to me now." Easement control statement. This one was the dagger. She attached the original easement declaration Grandma had filed. Her new statement simply affirmed, as the new owner, that all access rights to the paved road were under strict review. No commercial, construction, or heavy equipment access will be permitted until a full safety and impact review is completed by the owner. She clicked Submit. The portal flashed a confirmation documents received, pending index, estimated indexing 24 hours. The public record was now catching up with the truth. Noon, time to build the fortress. Riley pulled up the number for the Blue Ridge Land Trust, a regional nonprofit she'd long admired. She'd dealt with them once for a client. "Blue Ridge Land Trust. This is Sarah speaking." "Sarah, my name is Riley Ashford. I'm the new owner of the Hollis Orchard property on the north shore of the lake. I'm calling to open a preliminary file for a conservation easement." There was a pause. The Hollis Orchard? We've had our eye on that parcel for years, Ms. Ashford," We were worried it was going to be sold for development. It's not, Riley said, the words tasting like victory. My grandmother, Evelyn Hollis, preserved it for a reason. I intend to make that preservation permanent. I want to lock the shoreline and the heirloom apple trees from any future development, permanently. We would be thrilled to begin that conversation, Sarah said, her voice electric with enthusiasm. Can I send you the preliminary application packet? Please, Riley said. I'll have it back to you by end of day. She hung up and smiled. This wasn't just defense. This was purpose. 1:15 p.m. With the land trust packet open on one screen, Riley opened the North Carolina state tax portal on the other. She was now the owner of a parcel pending conservation. This made her eligible. She filled out the application for the state's conservation tax credit. She attached the deed, the affidavit, and her preliminary file number from the land trust. She typed in the acreage, the precise feet of protected shoreline. She ran the numbers one last time. Projected certificate value, redeemable over 3 years, $240,000. It wasn't just a shoebox apartment anymore. She now commanded a $250,000 asset, created from the very land her family had called worthless. She clicked Submit. 2:05 p.m. Liabilities. Ownership wasn't just a privilege. It was a stack of responsibilities. That derelict lake house was now her derelict lake house. Her problem. Her liability. She called her insurance broker. Hey, Mark, it's Riley Ashford. I need a new binder. Property. Another rental. No, personal acquisition. It's the Hollis Orchard on the lake. Riley, that's a big property. I thought your family. The title is solely in my name as of this morning. The policy lapsed last month. I need a new one. Full liability, structural, fire, and a rider for the unpaved access roads. And I need it live, as soon as possible. Let me run this. Okay, it's an older structure, so the premium, here we go. I can bind it. Coverage will be live at 2:30 p.m. today. You are covered. Riley. Send me the declaration page, Riley said. Thank you. Mark. Another piece of paper. Another wall. 3:00 p.m. Knowledge is leverage. Her family had used ignorance and assumption as a weapon. Riley would use data. She commissioned a Phase 1 environmental site assessment from a reputable local firm. It was an expense, but a necessary one. She needed to know what was really there. Leaking oil tanks. Old pesticides from the orchard. I need the standard report, she told the scheduler. Any recognized environmental conditions, I need it rushed. This wasn't just for her. It was for the bank. It was for the land trust. And it was for the moment her father would inevitably claim the land was an unsalvageable toxic dump that had to be sold. She wanted the report that said, in clinical, third-party language, no, it's clean, it's valuable. 3:42 p.m. Time to project authority. She opened a blank document. She did not write, Dear Dad. She drafted 2 letters. The first was to the developer her father had mentioned. The second was to the local heavy equipment and excavation company she knew he always used. The language was cold, professional, and copied directly from Jonah's templates. To whom it may concern, this letter is to formally notify you that as of today's date, all property known as Hollis Orchard, including all structures and easements, is under the sole ownership of R. Ashford. All prior discussions, negotiations, or site visit permissions granted by any other party, including Carl Ashford or Deborah Ashford, are null and void. The property is now a designated private preserve. All access, including for surveying or assessment, is prohibited without the express written consent of the owner. Any unauthorized presence on the property will be considered trespassing and will be treated accordingly. Thank you. R. Ashford. Owner. She didn't send them yet. She saved them as PDFs. They were bullets. Chambered and ready. 4:10 p.m. The digital walls were up. Time to build the physical ones. Riley was on the phone with a local survey supply company. Yes, I need 58-foot steel T-posts and 20 rolls of high-visibility orange flagging. She paid with her Kestrel Ledger credit card. Next call, a local sign printing shop. I need 10 signs, 24 by 24 aluminum, weatherproof. I need them by tomorrow. She emailed the file. The text was simple, black, and bold. Private property. No trespassing. This land is a protected area. The Hollis Preserve. Owner R. Ashford. She'd post them herself. 444. The final piece of the financial puzzle. The conservation tax credit was a $240,000 asset. It was real. It was bankable. Riley logged into her business banking portal for Kestrel Ledger LLC. She navigated to her line of credit. It was a modest line, secured by her firm's receivables. She uploaded the preliminary approval from the land trust and the state tax credit application. She sent a message to her small business banker. Hi, Helen. I'm updating my firm's collateral file. We've secured a new asset, a $240K state conservation tax credit, certificate pending. I'd like to use this to collateralize an increase in our operating line of credit. We're planning some capital expenditures for a new acquisition. She was leveraging the asset they wanted to steal to fund the repairs on that same asset. It was a perfect closed loop. It was beautiful. 5:19 p.m. The work was done. The traps were set. The paper was filed. Riley shut down her monitors. The shoebox was quiet again. She grabbed her blazer and her purse. She walked out of her building and down the street. Not to her car, but to the small, independent stationery shop downtown. The bell on the door chimed. The shop smelled of leather, ink, and thick, expensive paper. She didn't browse. She walked straight to the back. She selected a single leather folio, not a binder, not a plastic folder, a folio. It was deep navy blue, almost black, with a simple, sturdy zipper. It felt heavy in her hand. Professional. She bought a single ream of 32-pound archival quality cream paper. The exact shade Grandma Evelyn had used for her letters. It cost her $39. Symbolism mattered. Paper beats pride. But the quality of the paper matters. 702p. The sun was a dying ember, staining the lake with shades of blood orange and bruised purple. Riley's car was the only one on the unpaved, rutted road to the lake house. Her new insurance declaration page was on the passenger seat. She parked and got out. The air was different here. It smelled of damp earth, pine, and the faint, sweet decay of apples in the orchard rows. She had Grandma's old key. It still worked. The front door of the lake house opened with a groan. She stepped inside. The air was cold. Still. Dust motes danced in the last beam of light from the window. This was the derelict place, the spider-filled house. It was silent, but it was a strong silence. The beams were thick, hand-hewn. The foundation was stone. She walked across the wide plank flooring of the main room. The floor creaked under her boot. It didn't sound like decay. It didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like an old violin, its strings tight, waiting to be played. It was a sound perfectly in tune with the steady, quiet beat of her own breath. She was home. Riley was back at the orchard by 9 the next morning. The steel T-posts and rolls of orange flagging from the Survey Supply Company were piled in the back of her Forester. She was hauling the first post toward the rutted access road when she heard the crunch of gravel, not a car, the rhythmic tick-tick-tick of a bicycle coasting. She straightened up, wiping a streak of rust on her jeans. Grant. He rolled to a stop, straddling his old mountain bike, breathing hard. He looked rumpled, his hair a mess, like he just rolled out of bed and sprinted here. "Riles," he panted. "I got your emoji. The paper." "I'm surprised you came," she said. It wasn't an accusation, just a fact. Grant had always been the family's Switzerland, surviving by staying neutral. I had to." He looked from her face to the pile of steel posts. "What is all this? It looks hostile." "It's called setting a boundary," Riley said. "The legal term is posting." She pulled her phone from her back pocket, her fingers already navigating the county's public portal. She didn't open a PDF she'd saved. She went to the public website. the one anyone could access. She typed in the parcel ID. She held the phone out to him. Grant squinted, leaning in. He read the document type deed TOD. He read the grantor Evelyn R. Hollis, and then his eyes landed on the beneficiary Riley M. Ashford. He went pale. He stepped back, his eyes wide, and looked from the phone to the lake house, then back to Riley. Sole beneficiary, he whispered. Sole beneficiary, Riley confirmed, pocketing her phone. Recorded 2 years ago. It never went to probate. It was never Dad's to sell. Grant let his bike fall to the gravel with a clatter. He sat down hard on the edge of the old porch, running both hands through his hair. "Oh my God," he breathed. "Oh, God. Riley." He looked up, his eyes sharp with a sudden, panicked realization. "They are going to explode." "That's the likely outcome," Riley said, picking up a post. "No, Riles, you don't get it." Grant stood up, pacing in a small, tight circle. "They're already moving. Dad was furious after you left on Sunday. He was on the phone all yesterday morning, ranting about insubordination. He thinks you're trying to block the probate sale, to get a bigger cut or something." "He's wrong." "I know," Grant's voice cracked. "But that's not the worst part. He came to me last night, after dinner." Riley stopped, the steel post heavy in her hand. She waited. Grant wouldn't meet her eyes. He was staring at the gravel, kicking a small stone. He told me, to find my old key to Grandma's place. The one she gave me when I used to cut the grass here. Riley's blood went cold. "Find it for what?" "He has a contractor buddy," Grant muttered, the words coming out fast now. "A confession. Someone who does quick work. He wanted me to bring the keys here this morning. Let the guy in, to assess the demo costs. He said, 'We need to get ahead of this. Grant, show the developer we're serious.' He was going to start gutting it. Riley, without permission, without probate, without anything." So her father's plan to retire a few cards had escalated to illegal demolition. "What did you tell him?" Riley's voice was quiet. "Dangerous." "I lied," Grant said, finally looking up. His eyes were miserable. "I told him I lost the key years ago. He got pissed. He said I was useless, just like my sister, and he stormed off. Said he'd just handle the locks himself." Riley let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you for telling me, Grant. He was just going to do it. He didn't even think to ask." "That's the problem," Riley said. "He thinks this is all his, that we are all his. He's been operating on assumptions his entire life. Grandma knew that. So, the TOD, the transfer on death thing, what is that? What does it mean?" "Exactly." Riley leaned the post against the porch. She sat down next to him, close enough for him to feel like an ally, not an enemy. She put it in plain English. "It means Grandma gave me the house, the orchard, and the lake, directly, like handing me a sealed envelope and telling me not to open it until she was gone. The will, the probate court, Mom and Dad's family plan, none of it matters. It's like it's in a different universe. The law sees her, and it sees me. No one else is in the room. The house was mine, legally, seconds after she died, and they've been trying to sell, and spend, and downsize my life, based on a fantasy." Grant nodded, absorbing it. He looked relieved. The confusion and fear were draining away, replaced by a slow, dawning clarity. "She knew," he said. "She knew they'd do this." "She knew," Riley affirmed. "She was the only one who ever read the fine print." "So what now?" "Now," Riley said, standing up and grabbing her phone. "I make the walls visible, and I change the locks." She made the calls from the porch. Grant sitting quietly on the steps, listening, first, to Maya Torres, her forensic bookkeeper. "Maya, you had a look at that brand deck." "Riley," Maya's voice was crisp, crackling with professional disdain. "It's not just a brand deck, it's a work of fiction. The metrics are inflated by at least 300%. The follower graphs are a joke. She bought a 50K bot block from a server in Estonia, but that's not the fun part. There's a fun part. Her projected revenue is based on 3 major brand deals. I checked with my contacts at 2 of them. Not only is there no deal, Savannah's been blacklisted for non-professional engagement, but here's the real fun. The studio expenses, she's already racked up the lighting, the software licenses, the consulting fees. Let me guess, Riley said, watching a hawk circle the lake. All routed to a single card. Maya said, a platinum Amex, registered not to Savannah, but to Deborah Ashford, and Riley. The account is 60 days past due, and there are 3 vendor invoices, totaling about 20 grand, that are sitting unpaid in Savannah's email. It looks like they were expecting a capital injection, fast. The developer money, the money from the land. They weren't just planning, they were kiting. Could I use this? Riley asked, thinking of Savannah's smug, filtered face on the FaceTime call. You could ruin her. Send these unpaid invoices to her brand partners. She'd be off the platform in a week. Riley was silent for a long moment. She thought about the Snickers at the table. Shoebox. Starter life. It was tempting. It was so tempting. No, Riley said, her voice firm. I'm not here to humiliate her. That's their game. I'm just here to set boundaries. The facts are enough. Paper quietly beats noise. Thanks. Maya, send me the summary report. For my files. She hung up. This wasn't about Savannah's online fantasy. It was about her family's real-world entitlement. Humiliating Savannah wouldn't stop her father from showing up with a crowbar. Next call. Jonah Pike, her attorney. Jonah, they're escalating. My father intended to bring a demo contractor out today, without permission. Not surprising, Jonah said calmly. It's time for the notice. The family courtesy notice. Exactly. It's polite, it's legal, it's clear. It informs them that you are the sole owner, provides the recorded index number of the affidavit, and states that all access is now by owner's consent only. It will also state that due to the lapsed insurance and the age of the structures, all access is prohibited until a full safety and liability assessment is complete. Mandatory safety protocols. It's non-negotiable. He'll ignore it. Let him, Jonah said. That's what trespassing is for. I'll have it drafted and sent to you by 3 p.m. You can forward it to them from your email, paper trail, she confirmed with her title officer contact, Lydia Rowe. Lydia, just checking, has the affidavit indexed? Like a charm. Honey, hit the public index at 8:52 a.m. I already ran a search myself. Your name is the only one on that title. It's a recorded wall. Anyone trying to sell, pledge, or get a loan against that orchard is going to hit it, and hit it hard. They're dead in the water. Last call. A local number. Gideon's contracting. Gideon, this is Riley Ashford, Evelyn's granddaughter. The man's gruff voice softened instantly. Riley. Lord, I was so sorry to hear about your grandma. She was a good woman, gave me my first job. Rest her soul. What can I do for you? I'm the new owner of the lake house. Gideon, the title is in my name, and I need to secure it. I need new locks. Today. And the front porch. It's sagging. I'm not looking to demolish. I'm looking to stabilize. There was a pause. You're keeping it. I'm keeping it. Well, hell, Gideon said, and she could hear him smile. That's the best news I've heard all year. My crew is on a job in Weaverville. But for you, for Evelyn, I'll be there myself in 2 hours. We'll have those locks changed and that porch shored up before sundown. And don't you worry, we'll get the permits pulled proper. We do this right. Thank you, Gideon. No, thank you, Riley. It's good to see that place in the right hands. When she hung up, Grant was just watching her. You're a general, he said, not unkindly. I'm a consultant, she replied. I assess risks and manage assets. Let's go post those signs. For the next hour, They worked. Riley used the post driver, the heavy thud satisfying and solid. Grant followed, unspooling the bright orange flagging, tying it taut between the steel stakes. They didn't talk. They just worked, creating a bright, unmissable line that separated the main road from the orchard's easement. By the time they finished, Riley was on her phone again, typing in a custom order. "What's that?" Grant asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "A plaque," Riley said, hitting confirm. "For the porch? By the new locks?" "What's it say?" "Hollis Orchard. Kept, not cashed." Grant let out a low whistle. He picked up his bike, brushing the gravel from the seat. He was quiet for a long time, just staring at the house, at the new orange line, at his sister. "Riles," he said, his voice soft. "Are you doing this? For revenge? For Sunday? For all the crap?" Riley turned to face him. The sun was high, and it lit the side of her face, making her look stark and clear. She thought about the shoebox comment. She thought about the stolen diner tips. She thought about the demand for her security deposit. "No," she said. "Revenge is about the past. This is about the future. I'm not doing this to get back at them. I'm doing this because they're wrong, and because they were so loud and so confident in their laughter that they never stopped to read the fine print. I'm doing this for truth, and I'm doing this for Grandma." Grant nodded. A slow, understanding nod. He got it. "She picked the right one," he said. He looked exhausted. Riley looked at him, really looked at him, the 19-year-old kid, caught between his parents' bluster and his sister's iron will. "Come on," she said, nodding to her car. "You look starved. I'll drive you back to your dorm. We can stop at the gas station." Minutes later, they were sitting on the tailgate of her Forester at a gas station halfway back to town. The no trespassing signs were in the back, ready for Gideon to post. They were sharing a bag of sour peach rings, the chemical tangy sugar coating their fingers, and for the first time in months, maybe years, they were laughing, really laughing, about a stupid professor Grant had, about a client Riley had to fire, about nothing. It was easy. It was light. It was the first honest moment they'd shared since they were kids, before the family pecking order had been so ruthlessly enforced. A cool breeze blew through the open lot, carrying a smell from a nearby bakery. It was sharp and sweet. Cinnamon. Riley closed her eyes, letting the sun hit her face, the sticky sweet peach ring on her tongue. That's what this felt like. Not revenge, not anger. The wind blew again, carrying that warm, sharp, undeniable smell. Riley decided that must be what dignity smells like. The family courtesy notice was a digital grenade rolled under their door. I emailed it at 3:05 p.m. As clinically as I would send an invoice, it was polite, it was legal, and it was clear. It cited the recorded index number. It mentioned the lapsed insurance and the mandatory safety protocols. It stated, in no uncertain terms, access by owner consent only. It took exactly 1 hour and 12 minutes for the shrapnel to hit. At 4:17 p.m., my phone lit up on my desk, a group text from my mother, to Riley, Grant, Carl, Savannah, Aunt Lou, subject, urgent family meeting. We are having a family meeting this Tuesday, 7 p.m., my house. We will be discussing the big plans for the Orchard project. Don't be late. This is mandatory. I stared at the screen. The pressure cooker had just been sealed. The hiss was beginning. Mandatory. She was still giving orders. She had read my legal notice not as a fact, but as a negotiation, a suggestion from her difficult, emotional daughter. I replied only to her. I am unavailable Tuesday. As stated in the notice, the property is not available for any project at this time. My phone buzzed in my hand. A furious, immediate vibration. From Deborah. This isn't a request. Riley, this is about the family's future. You need to stop this nonsense and be a team player. From Deborah. Your father is furious. You're embarrassing us. From Deborah. Did you even read Carl's spreadsheet? I hadn't. I checked my email. There it was, sent an hour before her text. Subject F.D. Hollis Orchard Pro Forma. Draft. I opened the Excel file. My shoebox apartment, which had been so quiet, suddenly felt cramped with the sheer, breathtaking incompetence of the document. It was a fantasy novel written in spreadsheet cells. He'd listed projected lot sale developer at a price that was 50% above the highest comp in the county. He'd listed Savannah's studio build-out as a capital investment, but it was the line item under logistics that made me stop. Easement access. Gravel paving. Existing asset. He was still assuming the road my road, the one I held the sole easement for, the one I had just legally affirmed my control over was a free utility. He was still trying to sell the developer a fantasy, using my assets as his down payment. I didn't feel anger, I just smiled. It was a sad, tired smile. He was a man trying to cash a check from a bank that had closed 20 years ago. He was bringing a spreadsheet to a deed fight. The next attack came, as expected, from the social media front. My phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. Grant had forwarded me a story. I clicked it. It was Savannah. She was at the gate to the orchard, the main gate, the one on the highway that Gideon had secured. She was wearing a flowing white dress, her hair perfect, posing with one hand on the new, thick chain. The filter she'd used turned the late afternoon light into a golden, angelic haze. Manifesting my studio here, the caption read. So excited to announce the future home of my wellness brand. Grandma Evelyn always wanted this land to be a place of healing and growth. Can't wait to share this journey with you all. Hollis Preserve Girl Boss building my dream. She'd tagged the location. She'd even used the name I had put on the signs. But in her haste to manifest, she'd framed the shot badly. There, bolted to the gatepost just 6 inches from her perfectly contoured cheek, was the brand new, weatherproof aluminum sign. Private property, no trespassing, the Hollis Preserve. Owner R. Ashford. Her manifestation was photobombed by my legal notice. I didn't even have to reply. The sign did it for me. Aluminum beats influencers. The calls started Tuesday morning, the day of the mandatory meeting I was skipping. The phone lit up like a switchboard. Each ring was a new wave of pressure. The first was Aunt Lou. I let it go to voicemail. Riley, dear. This is your Aunt Lou. Her voice was a wheezing cloud of betrayal. I am just baffled, absolutely baffled by this behavior. Your mother is sick with worry. After all we've done for you, I remember bringing you that 3-bean casserole when you had that little cold in 1998. This is how you repay us, by trying to steal your grandmother's house. You are being so ungrateful. A casserole from 1998. That was her proof of sacrifice. That was the debt she was calling in. I deleted the message. The next call was my father. I was on a conference call with a client, so I sent him to voicemail. 2. His message wasn't pleading, it was blustering. He was trying to sound like a CEO. Riley, your mother told me you're ignoring her. Now listen to me. A long, audible breath. I've been talking to my own legal counsel. You think you're smart, but you don't know what you're doing. We are forming a bankruptcy remote LLC for the property. It's a standard asset protection vehicle. You can't touch it, so you can stop this little stunt right now. We're having the meeting tonight, and you will be there, or we'll proceed without you. Don't be stupid. I almost laughed. Bankruptcy Remote LLC. He'd clearly Googled how to protect assets from creditors and picked the most impressive-sounding phrase. He was floating buzzwords as if they were magic spells, as if saying the words LLC could somehow bulldoze a recorded transfer on death deed. He was trying to form an LLC for a property he did not own. It was like trying to take out a car loan for my neighbor's Toyota. Minutes later, a text from my mother. The bad cop was done. Here was good cop. Riley, honey, please, let's just talk. Your father is just stressed. He's trying to do what's best. We don't want to fight. We can all find a way to share this. Grandma would want all of us to benefit. I stared at that word. Benefit. I heard benefit and my mind translated it instantly, just as it had translated clutter into erase your receipts. Benefit meant bleed. She wanted us all to bleed the land, bleed its value, bleed its equity, bleed every last cent Grandma had so carefully preserved, and pour it into Savannah's failing brand and my father's bad debts. My phone rang again. A different number. Jonah Pike. I picked it up. "They're active," I said. "I know," Jonah's dry voice replied. "They just tried to file an emergency lis pendens against the property." My blood ran cold. "What?" "Don't worry. It was rejected. The clerk kicked it back in 20 minutes. Their filing was, let's call it, procedurally incompetent. They cited probate dispute on a non-probate asset. But it tells me they're desperate. Riley, they're throwing spaghetti at the wall. Expect more. They're going to try to file emergency last-minute paperwork, anything to cloud the title and scare you into a settlement. Stay ahead. Don't answer their calls. Let me handle the filings." "Understood," I said. "They're panicking. Panicked people are dangerous. Stay sharp." We hung up. The pressure was immense. This was the stage of the fight where they tried to make it so loud, so messy, so expensive, that I would just give in to make the noise stop. I was checking a data file for a client when another, more urgent alert pinged. An email from Maya. Subject: red flag. Urgent. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. Maya had set up a credit alert on my parents, tied to the property's parcel ID. "Riley, your mother just applied for a home equity line of credit HELOC from First National Bank. It's a rapid approval application, and guess what she listed as adjacent collateral on the form? The Hollis Orchard. It's nonsense, legally." Maya's email continued. "They'll run a title search and shut it down immediately. But if it gets in front of a lazy underwriter, they might just see the Ashford name, see the adjacent note, and approve a small draw before the title search is complete. It's a long shot, but it's dangerous. They're trying to get liquid. Now, this was it. This was the real crime. Not just bluster and spreadsheets. This was attempted fraud. They were trying to borrow money against my house. I didn't panic. I didn't call my mother and scream. The heat I'd swallowed on Sunday had become a cold, efficient engine. I opened a new, blank document. I typed. I pulled the recorded affidavit index number. I pulled the insurance binder declaration page. I pulled the filed easement control statement. I drafted a one-page letter. It was polite, devastatingly professional, and colder than the lake in winter, to underwriting department. First National Bank. Reapplication by Deborah Ashford, SSN. Collateral listed as Hollis Orchard Parcel ID. Dear Underwriting Team, it has come to my attention that an application has been submitted by Ms. Deborah Ashford, which attempts to name the above parcel as collateral. Please be advised I am the sole legal owner of this property, as confirmed by the enclosed transfer on death deed and recorded affidavit index. Ms. Ashford has no ownership interest, financial stake, or legal authority whatsoever regarding this property. Any attempt to pledge this asset is fraudulent. The property is not, and will not be, encumbered. For your records, I have also attached the property's current insurance binder and the filed notice of ownership change. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Sincerely, R. Ashford, owner, Hollis Preserve. I found the email address for the bank's main underwriting inbox. I hit send, the bank's automated reply. "Thank you for your message. We will respond within 24 hours. Popped up instantly. I knew it wouldn't even take that long. I had just saved them from a massive compliance failure. The thud of their rejected stamp would be audible from my apartment. The mandatory Tuesday meeting came and went. I cooked salmon and watched a documentary on land conservation. My phone was silent. My father's bluster, my mother's pleas, my aunt's casseroles, they had all hit the wall of my one-page clarification. The silence lasted until Wednesday afternoon. A text from Grant. "You didn't come," I typed. "I was not required." He replied instantly. It was, "Bad. Riles, they are amped. Dad was throwing his phone. Mom was crying. Savannah was screaming about her brand reputation after her followers saw the no trespassing sign and started asking questions. I waited. "They're planning something else," Grant texted. "Another dinner. Thursday. Mom's orders. She said to tell you, dress to impress. She's inviting someone. The developer. Maybe I don't know. It feels like a trap. Be careful. Dress to impress." They were staging another performance, another public humiliation. They were going to try to ambush me, to pressure me in front of a stranger. A slow, cold calm settled over me. "Okay," I texted back to Grant. "Thanks for the heads up." I stood up from my desk. The pressure cooker was off. The noise was gone. I knew the final play. I walked to my closet and pulled out my tote bag. I opened my desk drawer and took out the navy blue leather folio, the one I'd bought at the stationery shop, the one filled with crisp, cream-colored paper. I carefully placed the folio inside the tote bag. I had my affidavit, my insurance binder, my easement declaration, my conservation credit application, my no trespassing sign photo, my correspondence with the bank. They wanted me to dress to impress. I would bring my paper. I turned off the lights in my shoebox apartment. I went to bed, and for the first time since Sunday, I slept a full, dreamless 8 hours. It was Wednesday, the day after the mandatory meeting I had ignored, and the silence from my family was a loud, ringing void. They were regrouping, they were plotting. I, on the other hand, was working. An email dinged in my inbox at 10:04 a.m. The subject line was simple: Hollis Orchard. Preliminary approval. It was from Sarah at the Blue Ridge Land Trust. My fingers, which had been flying across a client's ledger, went still. I clicked. It was a formal PDF, on their official letterhead. The logo, a stylized blue mountain, felt like a shield. "Dear Ms. Ashford, following a review of your application, the preliminary maps, and the state's conservation priorities for the watershed, we are pleased to offer preliminary approval for the Hollis Orchard Conservation Easement. Our board was unanimous. We are prepared to move forward with the formal appraisal." I scanned past the legal language, my eyes hunting for the number. There it was. "Based on our preliminary assessment, we concur with your estimate. The projected state conservation tax credit for an easement of this scope is valued at $240,000 USD. I printed the letter. The paper was warm from the printer. I ran my thumb over the dollar amount. $240,000, not from a developer, not from clear-cutting the land, from saving it. This single piece of paper, this crisp and undeniable letter on official letterhead, was worth more than my parents' combined pro forma fantasies. It was the first number in my counter-narrative. The mail arrived an hour later. In it was a thick, windowed envelope from my insurance broker. It wasn't just the digital binder. It was the full, hard-copy policy. I fanned through the declaration pages. Coverage effective. This document was its own kind of power. It systematically shut down one of their most likely avenues of attack. They could no longer claim the property was an unsafe, uninsurable liability. They couldn't use a manufactured code violation as a pretext to bypass my consent. I owned the risk, and now I owned the protection. I was the one who defined safe. When I drove out to the orchard in the afternoon, the air was sharp with the smell of cut wood. Gideon's truck was gone, but the evidence of his work was profound. The porch no longer sagged. New support beams, clean and pale, were sistered against the old dark wood. The front door sported a new, heavy-duty deadbolt. Further down, near the road, a surveyor's truck was parked. A man in a high-visibility vest was hammering the last stake into the ground. He'd flagged the entire easement path, the one Grandma had deeded to me. The line of bright orange tape, fluttering in the breeze, was like a shoelace pulling the whole story tight. It was a physical, unmissable, day-glow orange line. It transformed my abstract legal right into a very real, very clear boundary. My father's imaginary developer road now had a barrier he couldn't ignore. That night, I didn't work on my family file. I opened Grandma's. I pulled out the recipe box again, but this time I looked for the notes I'd always skipped. Tucked behind a card for green tomato relish were 3 pages of notebook paper. The lines faded, filled with her strong, clear cursive. It was her grafting log. Notes on the heirloom apple trees. Hollis russet. Graft 4 rootstock M1011. Strong start. Good flavor. Keeps till March. I opened a new tab on my browser. Appalachian Heirloom Apple Project. I found a small, state-funded grant for the restoration of lost varietals. I sat there and typed out the application. I wasn't just the owner, I was the steward. And when I got to the section for historical significance, I scanned Grandma's handwritten grafting notes and attached the file. This wasn't about money, this was about roots, but I was still a strategist. While I was honoring the past, I was also preparing for a hostile future. I opened a blank document for immediate release. Hollis Orchard to become a protected community preserve. I drafted the entire press release. I wrote about the partnership with the Blue Ridge Land Trust. I wrote about the historic Heirloom Apple Restoration Project. I wrote about honoring the legacy of Evelyn Hollis by protecting the land from development. I even included a line. The timeline for opening the preserve to the public is pending the new owner's long-term restoration plan. I saved it in my Hollis folder. Draft press release, DocsEX. It was a bomb. Undetonated. It was the lever of public opinion, ready to be pulled if Savannah or my parents tried to take their family drama public. I would counter their spin with the truth, backed by a beloved local nonprofit. My work, my real work, had never been better. The focus I poured into the Hollis file had streamlined everything. I ran the quarterly numbers for Kestrel Ledger LLC. It was our best quarter on record. I immediately logged into my payroll system and authorized modest but meaningful bonuses for my 3 contractors. Thanks for a great Q3. Appreciate the hard work. RA, loyalty compounds. I was building my own family, one based on competence and mutual respect. Gideon had left me the new keys. 2 sharp, freshly cut brass keys. I drove to the hardware store and had 2 copies made. I put one on my own keyring. It felt solid, permanent. I slipped the other into a small envelope, the kind you use for gift cards. I wrote Grant on the front. It was an act of trust. This entire time, I hadn't spoken to my family, but they were coming. Grant's text had warned me. Thursday, dress to impress. They were setting a stage. So I would set 1, 2. I took a clean, 1-inch binder from my office shelf. I designed a cover page. The Hollis Preserve. Welcome Code of Conduct. This was the new law. Inside, I put a fresh copy of the survey map, the boundaries clearly highlighted. I put in the easement path, and then I wrote the Code of Conduct. It wasn't emotional. It was a list of standards. Access is by appointment only, with 48 hours notice, no commercial activity of any kind including, but not limited to, professional photography, social media content creation, or filming is permitted without a written location agreement and proof of insurance. All safety protocols regarding the lake house and orchard must be followed. A liability waiver is required for all guests. No drama, just standards. On Thursday morning, Sarah from the Land Trust met me at the property for the site walk. The air was misty, the ground damp. She was ecstatic. "It's even better than the maps," she said, her breath fogging. I wasn't in a manifesting dress. I was in my oldest jeans, a rain slicker, and work gloves I'd grabbed from my trunk. We spent an hour walking the shoreline, talking about erosion control and native plantings. Sarah's assistant, a young, enthusiastic guy named Ben, was taking photos for their file. He snapped one of me, mid-laugh, pointing at one of Grandma's stubborn old russet trees, my face damp with rain, my gloves covered in mud. It was real sweat. It was not staged content. It was the absolute, polar opposite of Savannah's gate photo. Before I left, I stopped at the antique mall on the edge of town. I found what I was looking for in a dusty back stall, a blue enamel coffee pot, slightly chipped, heavy in my hand. It was just like the one Grandma used to keep on the stove. I bought it. Ritual has power. I would sit on that newly stabilized porch, drink coffee from that blue pot, and I would keep this place. It was my armor. It was 5:30 Poshima am. Thursday. Dinner was at 7. I sat at my desk. I opened my calendar. I found the invite from my mother. Family dinner, 7 p.m. I clicked edit. I deleted her title. I typed in a new one. At dinner, bring your best. I hit update all. Let them see that pop up on their phones. Then, I began the final assembly. I took out the $39 navy blue leather folio. I took out the ream of heavy, cream-colored paper. I printed 3 complete sets. The printer hummed, each page landing in the tray like a verdict. Page 1, the recorded transfer on death deed. Page 2, the recorded affidavit of death of transfer or index 7789B. Page 3, the recorded declaration of easement control. Page 4, the full insurance policy declaration page. Page 5, the Blue Ridge Land Trust preliminary approval letter $240,000. Page 6, the Hollis Preserve Code of Conduct. I picked up my 3-hole punch. The chunk. Chunk? Chunk was the only sound in the room. It was methodical. It was satisfying. I pulled out a set of crisp, white divider tabs. I labeled them. My handwriting clear and steady. Deed, easement, credit, insurance. I assembled one perfect, undeniable binder and slipped it into the leather folio. I had my facts. I had my numbers. I had my paper. They wanted me to dress to impress. The clock on her microwave read 400 p. Outside, the afternoon rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets of Asheville polished to a black mirror. The air coming through her cracked shoebox window was cool and sharp, smelling of wet pavement and ozone. Riley Ashford was not pacing. She was sitting on the floor of her living room, her back against the sofa, a soft cloth in one hand and a can of saddle soap in the other. She was polishing her boots, not heels, not the flimsy flats her mother always bought her. She was polishing the flat, sturdy, leather boots she had worn to the orchard, the ones with the good soles. The ritual was grounding, the scrape of the cloth, the waxy, chemical smell of the polish, the slow circular motions that brought the dull leather to a deep, healthy shine. They had told her to dress to impress. She would dress like a woman who owned the ground she stood on. The clock on her parents' mantel read 4:30 p.m. The house was not calm. It was humming with the high, thin clink of good china. Deborah was setting the table for 8, not the usual 5. Her movements were sharp, energized by a nervous, brittle excitement. This was her stage, and she was setting it for a triumph. She unfolded the heavy linen napkins, the ones she hadn't used since Thanksgiving 2 years ago, and placed them beside the plates. Carl was not helping. He was at the head of the table, a stack of glossy, trifold brochures in his hand. He placed one at each seat, with the exception of Riley's, which he left pointedly bare. He placed them as a minister would place church bulletins, as if they were gospel. Hollis Orchard Redevelopment, a new vision for a new generation. He straightened the developer's logo, whistled a tuneless, self-satisfied little song, and surveyed his work. The clock in Riley's bedroom read 5:00 p.m. She stood in front of her small dresser mirror. She had chosen her armor, a pair of dark, well-fitting trousers, a black silk shell, the navy blazer that served as the uniform for Kestrel Ledger LLC. She looked professional, severe, and, she thought, invisible. She opened a small, worn velvet box. It had been her grandmother's. Inside, nestled on faded satin, were 2 opal studs. They were not large. They were not diamonds. They were quiet. She fastened them to her ears. They caught the dim apartment light, flashing a secret, milky fire of green and blue. Quiet glitter over loud declarations. They were the last gift Grandma Evelyn had given her. Riley touched one, the stone cool against her skin. "Okay," she whispered to her reflection. "Let's go." The clock on Savannah's dashboard read 5:15 p.m. She was in her white SUV, parked in her own pristine driveway. Her ring light snapped onto her steering wheel. She was live. "Hey guys. Oh my God. So excited." She breathed into the camera, her hand fluttering over her mouth in a practiced gesture of giddy secrecy. "I'm on my way to a huge family dinner right now, and let's just say we're making a big announcement tonight." She fake gasped, her eyes wide. "We are manifesting so hard right now, and the universe is delivering. I can't say much more. But you get it. We're building our dream. Wish me luck." She blew a kiss to the camera. The comments were already flooding in. A waterfall of hearts and tiny house emojis. She was building her public case. She was creating a narrative that would make any opposition look like bitter, jealous sabotage. The clock in Riley's kitchen read 5:45 p.m. A knock on her apartment door. Sharp, hesitant, not her family's impatient rapping. She opened it. Grant. He was standing in her hallway, shifting his weight from foot to foot, his hands shoved deep in his hoodie pockets. "Hey," he said. "Hey, Grant, you're early. Dinner's not at my place." "I know." He looked past her, into the small, neat apartment. This is a nice place. Riles. It's not a shoebox. It's clean." "Thanks," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "What's up?" He pulled one hand from his pocket. He was holding a small, dented, floral-patterned tin box. I came to give you this." He thrust it at her. Riley took it. Her breath caught. It was Grandma's recipe card holder, the one that had sat on the kitchen counter at the lake house for 30 years. "Grant, where did you—" "Mom had it in a cardboard box by the garage door," he muttered, staring at his shoes. "The yard sale pile. She was just going to sell it. For, like, $1. I snagged it when she wasn't looking." Riley's throat tightened. This was it. The final, definitive choice. He wasn't just a source. He was her ally. He was saving the evidence. "Thank you, Grant," she said, her voice thick. "This means more than you know." "Yeah, well." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, full of a new, sober understanding. "They're crazy tonight. Dad's been practicing a speech. It's bad. Just be careful. I'll see you there." He turned and was gone, his sneakers silent on the apartment hallway carpet. Riley closed the door. She opened the tin box. The immediate smell of cardamom, dried ink, and old paper hit her. She flipped past Apple Brown Betty, past Sunday Chicken, and there it was, in the back, the folded, cream-colored note. "If they laugh, hand them paper." She didn't put the note back. She walked to her tote bag, unzipped the navy leather folio, and slid the small, powerful card into its front sleeve. It was her mission brief. The clock on her laptop read 6:15 p.m. Her prep was complete. The boots, the opals, the folio, the mantra. Now, the final logistics. An email pinged. From Jonah Pike, Esca. Subject confirmation. Ms. Ashford, as requested. All documents are recorded. All filings are time-stamped. The affidavit of death is indexed with the county as of yesterday. The title is clean, clear, and solely in your name. You are, from a legal perspective, bulletproof. Go to dinner. J.P. A steel rod of pure, cold confidence slid down her spine. Bulletproof. A second later, her phone buzzed with a text. Maya Torres. Red flag. But a good one. Just got an alert. First National Bank. The one you sent the letter to auto-triggered another soft credit pull on Deborah this afternoon. It was auto-rejected. The system has her flagged. She's now trying a different bank. A small regional credit union. They're desperate. They're trying to get liquid before dinner. They have no idea the well is dry. Your letter worked. They're just shaking the vending machine at this point. Riley felt a grim, dark smile touch her lips. Of course they were. They were walking into this dinner with empty pockets. about to make a speech on how they were going to spend a fortune they didn't have, from an asset they couldn't touch. The humiliation they had so carefully staged for her was the only thing they actually owned. The clock on her car's dashboard read 6:30 p.m. She was driving. The rain-washed city gleamed under a sky that was breaking apart, showing streaks of pale gold. Golden hour. She wasn't driving to her parents' house. Not yet. She took the turnoff toward the lake. She didn't drive down the easement road, but she pulled over on the main highway, stopping right by the newly chained-off gate. She got out of the car. The air was perfect. The new orange flagging tied to the steel posts was vibrant, almost electric in the low light. Her no trespassing sign was clear, stark, and legible from 50 feet. The lake was a sheet of peach-colored glass. And then, in the deep shadows of the heirloom apple trees, she saw the first one, a single, blinking pinprick of green-gold light. Then another, and another. The fireflies were rising. They sparked like signal lamps between the rows. A quiet, living network of communication. Her land, alive, and signaling to its owner. Riley leaned against the hood of her car, the engine ticking as it cooled. She breathed in the smell of pine and damp earth. She said it aloud, to the orchard, to the lake, to the ghost of her grandmother. "We keep it." It was a vow. The clock on her phone read 6:45 p.m. She was back in the car, parked on a quiet side street 1 block away from her parents' house. She would not be late. She would not be early. She would arrive at 7:00 p.m. precisely. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a text from Aunt Lou. "Riley, dear, just a reminder we're having guests. Wear something cheerful. Your mother is trying so hard. Please, try to make an effort." Riley looked at the message. Then her gaze shifted to the passenger seat. The navy blue leather folio sat there, heavy, solid, and silent. A slow, quiet grin spread across her face. "Oh, I'm bringing the sunlight, Aunt Lou," she murmured to the empty car. "Sunlight in a folder." She was ready. She picked up her phone, with its buzzing, demanding, frantic notifications. She pressed and held the power button. The screen glowed, then offered her the option. She slid her finger across, power off. The screen went black. The car's cabin fell into a sudden, perfect, cathedral quiet. It was just her, the scent of her leather boots, the quiet fire of the opals in her ears, and the weight of the paper beside her. The stage was set. She put the key in the ignition. It was time. I walked through the oak door at 7:00 p.m. Precisely. The dining room was glowing. My mother, Deborah, believed ambient lighting softened the edges of reality, and tonight, the house was ablaze with it. Lamps in every corner, candles on the sideboard. It felt theatrical, like the footlights on a set, designed to blind the audience to the shabby parts of the production. In the far corner, by the china cabinet, sat Savannah's ring light, angled toward the table, not even hidden, an accidental witness, ready to capture the performance. They were all there, my parents, Aunt Lou, Savannah, and Grant, who immediately became fascinated by the pattern on his plate, and 2 new faces, a man in a shiny, ill-fitting suit, and a woman who looked like his pale, silent accessory. This had to be the developer. "Riley, darling, you made it." Deborah swept over, kissing the air beside my ear. She smelled overwhelmingly of Elnet hairspray and a thin, acidic layer of anxiety. "Jim, this is our other daughter. Riley. Riley. This is Jim and his wife. Carol." Jim shook my hand. His was damp, his grip too eager. "Great to finally meet you. Your folks have told me so much." Aunt Lou, already fanning herself, eyed my blazer and dark trousers. "Oh, Riley. That's very professional. We're celebrating tonight, dear." "It's my work attire, Aunt Lou," I said, taking my designated seat, the one at the end, the one without the glossy, trifold brochure that sat at every other place setting like a church bulletin. The small talk began, and so did the small stings. They were designed for the benefit of the guests, to establish my role in the family narrative. Jim and Carol were just admiring the neighborhood, Deborah said, passing the rolls. We were just telling them how you love living downtown, Riley, in that cozy apartment. Jim laughed politely. A real starter life, huh? We were just by your building. Actually, parking at your building is rough. I hear you should really think bigger. There it was, the shoebox humiliation. Laundered for company. Think bigger. I like my apartment, I said, my voice neutral. The parking is fine if you know where to look. My lack of apology, my refusal to be embarrassed, seemed to throw Deborah off script. An awkward silence descended, filled only by the clink of silverware. Carl, seeing his cue, tapped his water glass with a fork. The sound was sharp, demanding. Well, he announced, beaming at Jim, since we're all here, I've prepared a little visualization of the future. He had a projector. Of course he had. The wall above the sideboard flickered, and a bright, blurry square appeared. Carl fumbled with the focus. The first slide slammed into view. Bold, ugly, Red Times New Roman, Hollis Orchard redevelopment, a family future. As you all know, Carl began, his voice adopting the smooth, confident cadence he used on the golf course. We've been blessed with this legacy asset, but legacy, he wagged a finger, doesn't pay the bills. Vision does. He clicked, a slide of the orchard, but it was defaced. Gaudy architectural renderings of a glass and steel monstrosity were superimposed over Grandma's lake house. We're looking at a multi-phase plan, Carl said, using a red laser pointer that jittered in his hand. Phase 1, the main residence, 4-car garage, infinity pool, a real family seat. He clicked again. Phase 2, Savannah's state-of-the-art studio and wellness center, right here, with maximum lake visibility. Savannah, who had been filming the presentation on her phone, preened and whispered, "It's going to be iconic." Phase 3, Carl continued, his voice swelling, is the subdivision of the upper acreage, high-end lots, gated community. This is where you come in. Jim, we sell those lots. We fund the entire vision. Deborah, seeing her part was next, placed a hand on her heart, the emotional garnish. Imagine, she said, her voice thick with manufactured sentiment. Imagine the memories your kids will have here. She aimed this, inexplicably, at me. A beautiful, new family retreat. Safe, modern, something that actually adds value, instead of just sitting there, rotting. She smiled, a wide, beatific smile that didn't touch her eyes. A place for all of us, Riley, a real legacy, for the whole family. The appeal to my hypothetical children, the casual, brutal dismissal of Grandma's home as rotting, it was all there. Carl clicked to the next slide. It was a map, the developer's plat. It showed the property lines, the main highway, and a thick red line snaking from the road to the proposed structures. I let the silence after Deborah's legacy speech hang in the air for a beat. 2 beats, 3. I leaned forward slightly. I did not look at my mother or my father. I addressed the developer, Jim. It's an ambitious plan, I said. My voice was calm, measured. It cut through the warm, glowing dining room air like a blade, a courtroom cadence. Carl beamed, mistaking my observation for surrender. Thank you, Riley. Glad you're finally on board. It's a win-win. I just have one logistical question. I kept my eyes on Jim, forcing him to be the one to answer. I pointed my chin at the projector screen. That access road, the red line, which road will your trucks use? Jim leaned forward, happy to be in his element. Oh, the existing one. Of course. We'll widen it, pave it properly. But using that paved easement is the key. Saves us a fortune in blasting. It's the only way in from the highway. Exactly, Carl boomed, gesturing confidently at the screen. That road is the asset that unlocks the rest of the asset. I nodded. The only road? The only one, Carl affirmed, his smile wide. triumphant. He was oblivious. He had just confidently placed his head on the block. I see. I reached down to the black tote bag resting by my polished boot. I pulled out the navy blue leather folio. It was heavy with paper. It made a solid, definitive thud as I placed it in the center of the table, on the gleaming oak, right next to the butter dish. The sound was not a sound of dinner. It was a sound of business. Every fork stopped. Mid-air, Aunt Lou's hand, holding her sweet tea, froze halfway to her mouth. Carl's smile tightened. A flicker of annoyance in his eyes. Grant, I saw from my periphery, sank lower in his chair, his head bowed. He knew what that folio meant. Deborah, ever the hostess, forced a laugh. It was a full octave too high. Goodness, Riley, what's this so formal? Don't tell me you brought work to a family celebration. She winked at Carol, the developer's wife. Is this your apartment wish list, sweetheart? Did you finally decide to think bigger? The shoebox joke. One last time. I didn't smile back. I looked at her, and then I slowly, deliberately, unzipped the folio. The sound cut through the room, sharp and decisive as a blade being drawn. I opened the cover. I flipped to the first section. The tab, white and crisp, was labeled in my own clear hand, Deed. This, I said, my voice clear and carrying to every corner of the room, is not a wish list. I turned the binder to face my father. This is the transfer on death deed for the Hollis Orchard, parcel ID number 447A, filed with the Buncombe County Register of Deeds. I didn't need to read the whole thing. I had memorized the relevant clauses. I looked at Carl, his face a mask of confusion. I'll skip to the operative part. It describes the property. Thence north 88 degrees, to a stone marker. It describes the assets, including all appurtenant rights, specifically Hollis Orchard, the residential structure known as the Lake Parcel, and all associated water rights. I paused, letting the legal weight of those words settle in the glowing room. And then, I continued, there is the beneficiary clause. Upon the death of the grantor, Evelyn R. Hollis, all right, title, and interest in the aforementioned property shall be conveyed to and vest immediately in. I lifted my gaze from the page. I looked directly at my father. I looked at my mother. Riley M. Ashford. I let the name hang in the air. It was recorded as index number 7789B. 2 years ago, it bypassed probate entirely. The land was never part of the estate. It was never yours to put in an LLC. Dad, it was never yours to sell. Silence. A complete, stunned, vacuum of sound. The developer, Jim, had gone rigid, his roll halfway to his mouth. His wife's eyes were wide as saucers. Aunt Lou made a small, choking sound. Carl's face was a terrible thing to watch. The ruddy, confident color drained from it, leaving a pale, grayish-white slackness. Deborah just stared, her mouth slightly open, the hostess' smile frozen and horrifying. Savannah was the first to recover. She let out a sharp, nervous laugh that sounded like a startled bird. "Oh my God! Riles!" she scoffed, her voice shaking, but she was trying to regain control. That's a really cute mock-up, very elaborate. Did you print that at Kinko's very official-looking?" She reached across the table, her long, pale fingers and acrylic nails aiming to snag the page. "Let me see this deed." I didn't move a muscle. I didn't flinch. I just placed my left hand flat on the document, covering the text. She stopped. Her fingers hovered over the plastic sheet protector, then retreated, as if she'd been burned. I did not let go. "It's not a mock-up, Savannah," I said, my voice perfectly quiet. I flipped the page. The shpy sound of the plastic sheet protector was abrasive in the silence. Tab 2. I angled the binder so Jim could read the header. Easement control. I looked at him, and then at my father. "Dad, Jim, you were just discussing the access road, the only way in." This is the declaration of easement Grandma filed on the same day as the deed. It states, I tapped the highlighted paragraph, that the only paved access road is under the sole written consent of the owner of this parcel, me, and my filed notice of ownership change explicitly prohibits all commercial and heavy equipment access until a full safety and liability review is complete, which it isn't. Jim, the developer, was no longer looking at Carl with admiration. He was looking at him with the cold, hard stare of a man who has been lied to. This wasn't a family dinner, it was a deposition, and he'd just discovered his key witness was a fraud. I flipped the page again. Shp. And finally, tab 3 conservation credit. I looked at my mother, who was now trembling. Her eyes locked on the binder as if it were a bomb. You said Grandma would want this land to be a place of healing and growth. Savannah, you're right. You said we should add value. Mom, I agree. I turned the binder so everyone could see the crisp, official letterhead of the Blue Ridge Land Trust. This is the preliminary approval for a state conservation easement. This land isn't being developed. Jim, it's being preserved. On purpose. And this letter, Mom, this single piece of paper, it confirms a state tax credit. I tapped the final, beautiful number. For $240,000. That's the value of not bulldozing it. That's the value of reading the fine print. I took a slow, deep breath. No one else in the room seemed to be breathing at all. The atmosphere was tomb-like, suffocating, lit only by Deborah's stupid, festive lamps. I slowly, deliberately, closed the folio. The zipper was loud in the silence. A definitive, final zip. I rested my hand on the smooth, navy leather. I looked from my father's pale, stunned face to my mother's gaping, speechless horror, to Savannah's blotchy, furious red patches of confusion. You were building a family future, I said, my voice low, even, and carrying to every corner of the quiet room. You were selling lots. You were funding studios. You were spending money. I paused, letting the accusation land, letting it soak into the good china and the linen napkins. Now, let's talk about whose future you were spending. The words settled in the glowing, lamp-lit room and detonated in the silence. My father's face, which had been pale, now seemed to collapse inward, the ruddy confidence of the family patriarch crumbling to dust. He looked at Jim, the developer, who was staring at him with a look of cold, utter contempt. That's not possible, Carl stammered, his hand fluttering near the useless, glossy brochure at his plate. He turned his eyes, now wild with panic, to me. We can contest this. We'll take it to probate. There's an equitable share for family. He was grasping at legal terms he didn't understand, phrases he'd heard on television. The transfer on death deed bypassed probate. Dad, I said. My voice was not loud, but it was absolute. It was the voice I used to deliver a final audit. That's its legal function. The document is recorded. The title has vested. It is final. Jim, the developer, made a small, disgusted sound. He pushed his chair back an inch. A subtle, physical act of disassociation. He was already mentally shredding the brochure. Deborah, seeing the legal argument failing, pivoted instantly to her preferred weapon, honey-coated manipulation. Riley, sweetheart, she began, her voice a high, sweet poison. Let's not be so adversarial. This is a wonderful opportunity. Think of the synergy we can co-brand the preserve with Savannah's image. A Hollis Preserve by Savannah Holloway collaboration. It would be a mutual uplift, a win-win for everyone. I didn't answer her. Instead, I reached into the folio. I slid out the Hollis Preserve Welcome Code of Conduct binder I had created. I pushed it smoothly across the polished oak table. It stopped in front of her plate. These are the new access protocols, I said. They require 48 hours notice for any visit, a signed liability waiver, and proof of insurance for any guests. I then took a single, thin sheet of cream-colored paper from the folio's front sleeve and placed it gently on top of the binder. The title was simple, Filming Content Creation Policy. And this, I said, my eyes finding Savannah's, stipulates that there will be no commercial photography or social media content creation of any kind on the property without a written location agreement and a fee. Savannah's face, which had been a mask of confused fury, contorted into pure rage. The curated wellness guru vanished, replaced by the spoiled child who had her toy taken away. "You can't do that," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "That's my brand. That's my launch." She lunged, her hand shooting across the table, her acrylic nails poised to snatch the page, but another hand got there first. Grant's, his hand, broad and steady, landed flat on the paper, covering it completely, stopping her inches away. He didn't look at her. He was looking at the page, his jaw tight. "Read it, Savannah," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was heavy. It was the steadiest thing in the room. He had chosen his side. I reached back into my folio. I pulled out 2 more single-page documents. I placed them in the center of the table, on top of my closed folio, like a final offering. "And for you, Jim," I said, my voice calm. "And for you, Dad, these are courtesy notices. One is for First National Bank. The other is for your development company." I looked at my father, whose eyes were darting from the papers to Jim's furious face. "They're just copies," I said quietly. "The originals were emailed to your underwriting departments. They were time-stamped at 6:55 p.m. 5 minutes before I knocked on the door." Jim the developer looked at the paper, then at me. A slow, grudging respect dawned in his eyes. He wasn't mad at me anymore. He was mad at Carl for wasting his time, for trying to sell him a house he didn't own. He had been made a fool, and my paper trail was his exit. "Family reputation," Aunt Lou suddenly sputtered, her fan beating the air furiously. "What will people think airing our laundry like this, in front of guests?" I didn't look at her. I simply reached out and tapped the top page of the folio, where the letter from the Blue Ridge Land Trust was visible through the plastic. "This," I said, my voice cutting through her panicked wheezing, "is our reputation now, a protected preserve, not a failed subdivision. That's the story that will be told." "We needed that money," Carl muttered. It wasn't a shout. It was a low, guttural confession of absolute defeat. The truth, finally, stripped of all its bluster. He looked old, and small, and pathetic. My eyebrow lifted. Just a fraction. "From a parcel Grandma preserved and deeded to me for the exact reason you're proving right now," I said. Deborah made one last, desperate pivot. She had lost the legal fight. She had lost the business argument. All that was left was the raw, emotional appeal to entitlement. "Riley, please," she begged, her eyes filling with tears that looked genuine only from a distance. "This is a misunderstanding. At least deed us the lake house. Just the house. Savannah's launch party is booked. The caterers. The invitations. It would ruin her. Ruin her." I stared at my mother, at her complete, unshakable belief that even now, after all of this, Savannah's party was more important than my grandmother's will, than my ownership, than the law. I slowly, deliberately, unzipped the folio one last time. They all leaned in, expecting one final, damning document. I opened it. I flipped to the very last tab. There was no paper, just 2 brass keys, tied together with a simple blue ribbon, Gideon's new keys. I took them out. The keys to the lake house, the keys to my home. I set them on top of the closed leather folio. Where they glinted under the chandelier light, the room held its breath. Deborah's eyes lit up with a wild, desperate hope. Was I giving in? I placed my fingers on the keys, and then I slid them back across the folio, away from her, toward myself. It was a quiet, final, devastating no. I stood. My chair made a soft scraping sound against the hardwood floor. My voice was low, even, and stripped of all emotion except a cold, hard clarity. "You laughed at my apartment," I said. looking from my mother to my father to my sister. You called it a shoebox. You told me to think smaller. I placed my hand flat on the leather folio. Here's the paperwork you forgot to respect. I turned my head and pointed with my chin to the fireplace mantel, to the silver frame that held the only honest witness in the room. Her estate isn't a punchline, I said. It's not your slush fund. It's not Savannah's backdrop. I looked back at them. My family, my adversaries, the stunned guests. It's preserved, and it's mine to steward. I gathered the folio. It was heavy in my hand, a shield made of facts. The opal studs in my ears caught the light from the chandelier. A flash of quiet. Secret fire. Around the table, chairs creaked, breath caught in throats. In that single, silent, stretched-out moment, the room finally understood. The power had not just shifted, it had been transferred, recorded, final. I turned and walked away from the table. I did not look back. My footsteps were steady on the polished floor. My hand closed around the cool brass of the front doorknob. The latch clicked open. And the scene freezes on my hand, closing the door behind me. The leather folio tucked securely under my arm. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. So please drop a comment below and let's connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. And if you'd like to help this story reach more people, please hit that hype button to give it an extra boost. It really helps the channel grow.